They closed down the road. Huh? So good morning, guys. Today is the day that I get to explore my favorite island here in Norway, Senja. I've been getting some bad sleep recently. I'm just using my black beanie here to pull down over my eyes, and a couple of times during the night it goes up, so I wake up and have to arrange everything again. So tomorrow morning I'm probably passing through Tromsø, and I'm gonna stop there and see if I can get a sleeping mask and some earplugs as well. So hopefully my sleep will improve further on. I was up early that morning, eager to set away on what in my mind was one of the top highlights of the whole trip. I had cycled around Senja 2 years earlier, and even though the weather wasn't on my side that particular time, I still found the island to be magical. However, all my excitement was to come to an abrupt end as I turned off the main road and was about to continue along the scenic route. They closed down the road. Huh? I was dreaming about going back here to this scenic road along the Senja coastline, and according to this sign, and I've also checked on Google Maps, there's a tunnel further on that's closed due to a landslide or a horse. So many horseflies here. I have to make this quick. So, in brief, there's a tunnel up ahead that's closed, and you have to go through that tunnel to be able to go the whole way to the ferry. There's another way around the island, but it's not as scenic by any imagination. That seems to be my only way, otherwise I won't get up to the North Cape, so I'm kind of stuck here on Senja. So I'm gonna have to skip out on this really scenic road that was one of the highlights of the whole trip. And if you're wondering why I'm tap dancing like this, it's because I've been bitten about 7 times now in the last minute by horseflies. So, anyway, I'm gonna cut my losses and head for the more boring road. It's not boring, it's still Norway, so it's gonna be fine, but I'm such a shame about this that I can't go on this road. Okay, I'm back on the bike now, so it's easier to explain without having to sacrifice your life to be bitten by horseflies. There's a road closure, and the scenic road goes all the way to the ferry, and now I have to take a detour of about 30 more kilometers. But this road is a lot flatter than the scenic road. So as I was standing there, a lot of RVs passed me, and I don't know if they saw the sign. It was a pretty small sign, but anyway, they have an engine that can take them over those mountains. Going the scenic road, I'll have to climb about 600 or 700 meters or so, and I'm not in the mood to do that twice today, and it would probably add maybe a day and a day or a half to my journey, and I don't really have the time if I'm gonna make it up to the North Cape. I guess I was kind of over exaggerating back there. This road is fine as well. I've been on it before and it's pretty nice. So I'm still in for a good day here in Senja. Sure, it's a lot hillier here in Senja compared to what I've been through earlier on this trip. And the bad part about all the hills is that my speed is slowing down a lot and all the flies are able to catch me. So I have to put in some effort here to get rid of my followers behind me. Finally at the top. Whew. That was by far the worst hill of this whole trip. The long road around the island turned out to be a very straight and for most of the time a somewhat flat road. So I was able to make up some big distances before lunch. As I left the more mountainous part of Senja and entered the more cultivated part of the island, I stumbled upon a shortcut, or what I believed was a shortcut anyway. In Sweden we have a saying that what appears to be a shortcut often turns out to be a detour in the end. And this was very much the case for this worn out road. Hello. Even though the surroundings were incredibly beautiful, I spent a lot more time on the shortcut than I would have guessed entering it. After a while, the road more and more seemed like a patchwork of different road surfaces, and a lot of it consisted of washboard quality roads. So I was quite happy when I finally reached the coast on the other side of the island and joined up with the main road that would lead me toward the ferry terminal. As always with these ferries, I'm cutting it kind of tight here. I have about 12 kilometers left to go and I have 55 minutes to do so, and according to Google Maps it should take about 40, but I think there can be some hills ahead here, so I better make a move on if I'm gonna make this ferry. Otherwise I have to wait a couple of hours for the next ferry tonight, so I really want to make this one. Yep, hills. Okay, I'm really tight with time right now, but I still gotta stop and make this tip for you. If you're in this area and going down this road, if you have a couple of hours over, make sure to go to this place, Husøy. It's a small picturesque fishing village on the other side of these mountains here, so you're in for quite a climb, but it's well worth it. Okay, let's hurry up again and make this ferry. The ferry took me to Kvaløya, which is the 5th largest island in Norway. So this is also a benefit of going with a bike here in northern Norway. Like all of these cars that are standing here in line, they have to wait for the next ferry because the one that just left was full. Just imagine being the first car here in line and being cut off and say you have to wait for 2 more hours at the ferry port. With a bike you can just roll on to the ferry, don't have to book anything, and the best thing, all the ferries here in Norway are completely free. So right after you get off the ferry in Brensholmen, you're gonna pass by this sign that says you're supposed to take right towards Tromsø. And even the sign for the Eurovelo says to do the same. Don't do this. Go straight ahead instead and follow that road for about 2 kilometers. If you do so, you're gonna end up on one of the nicest beaches in the whole of Europe. And once you're there, if you just climb up a little cliff, you're gonna get a perfect view of one of the most spectacular bridges here in Norway. The bridge goes over to the island of Sommerøy, and it's well worth a visit. So can you see the flies, by the way, or is it just me? Putting up my tent for the night at the beach would have been great, but I was on a mission and I needed to make up some distance, so I hit the road again and continued my journey toward the halfway point of the trip, Tromsø. A short while after the detour to Sommerøy, I stumbled upon the tunnel Återviktunnelen, and even though it had the genius signal system of the tunnels back in Senja, it still felt a bit sketchy going through it. much due to the fact that the tunnel was very poor lit and the width of the tunnel only being about 5 meters. The sound of the cars were horrible and it felt like they were coming a bit too close at times, so I even stopped once and let everyone pass me until I carried on. Luckily the tunnel was only about 600 meters long, so I got out of it pretty quickly. Once again I found myself cycling in that golden part of the evening, and I felt like I was able to continue cycling all throughout the night if needed. So I just wanted to share a story from the day while I wait for my food to get ready. It was when I was in Senja, and before I hit the ferry I went through a little detour to get to a supermarket, and almost all of the supermarkets here in Norway I hadn't even had to lock up my bike. I take my handlebar bag with most of my valuable things in it inside of the store, the rest I leave outside, and I basically haven't had to lock the bike so far. So I go in and there's this old lady who's taking a lot of time, like old ladies do in the cashier, but I don't mind. I have good time. And then I come out in the parking lot and this lady is taking her roller down the ramp, and then the cashier comes running after her and telling her that she forgot some eggs that she had bought. And when I started packing my things, old man in his Toyota pulled up against the wall at the supermarket and parked his car, came out of the car, lit up a cigarette and started talking to me in English, I might add. But I asked him if he understood Swedish. The thing is that Swedish and Norwegian are very similar, especially us living up here in the north. Our languages kind of interact, so we understand each other perfectly. So we talked about the road closure on the other side of the island and how it affected people living on the island here. And he said that the tourism would take a major hit this summer since a lot of people hear about the road closure and they skip out on Senja and go the major E6 highway on the mainland instead. And after having a couple of tough years earlier with everything that's been going on the last 2 years, the tourism here is really taking a hit. And he also talked a bit about when they built this scenic tourist road back in the 90s, and that it was a really big happening when they finally opened it. Previously, when tourists had come here to Senja, they had to take the boat and go around in all of these small fjords. But now that they had opened this scenic tourist road, people could just take their cars, or like me, take their bicycles around the island. And tourism really boomed back then, about 20 years ago. So it's really unfortunate that this happens to the island, because a lot of people are affected by it. He told me that the basis of the closure wasn't a landslide, it was just, it's too risky in some places for big boulders to come crashing down the slopes of the mountains. So they've had a couple of near incidents, so that's why they decided to close that section of the road. So even though I go around and trying to capture all the wonderful landscape around me, these small things, these interactions with local people are what matters the most. That's what I'm gonna remember from this trip, talking to local people and other cyclists and just people in general. So this night I'm camped out here at yet another free campsite. There are a couple of RVs and people staying in tents and so on, but I'm the only bike tourist around. So regardless if I've stayed at like regular campgrounds or like this free campsites, almost all of the nights I've run into other bike tourists. So I've had a great deal of interactions and chats with other people going both north and south on this bike trail here. So I've rambled on for way too long now, and I really need to get to bed to be able to put in a long day tomorrow. So in about 30 kilometers I'm gonna reach Tromsø tomorrow, which is regarded the northernmost city in the world. So that's gonna be exciting to check out what that city has to offer. Plus tomorrow I'll also be taking 2 ferries. So that's next week's video, and I'll hope you tune in then. And until then, have a good one.